And sure enough, no music. Todd, give us what you can.
Doon 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 doom doom bump doom bump bump ba 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 da da boom ba ba doo ba doom bump ba 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 da dum. Hi, this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to Show X with the favorite Scotsman Ken, all the way from the student accommodations in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to Show X with your favorite Scotsman Ken, Professor Dr. Rear Admiral Jedi Master Ken, now living in Michigan, and our child of the corn Wayne, who now lives mostly in Colorado. Hey, I'm on this show too, and I don't get any billing at all? Well, I know what to do with this. So that there, Freeman Marsh. You're listening to Show X with a favorite Scotsman Ken, now living in Michigan, our child of the corn Wayne, currently living in Colorado, and Todd, who's got an army of angry Norwegians at his back. Enjoy the show.
Oh,
That's
thank
the
you.
open.
Thank you for that.
And this is fix in post. And why would we fix perfection? There's nothing to be fixed here.
No, that was wonderful. We're totally keeping that. What are you talking about? Hey, everybody. It is 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, not the 40th of October, but just the 4th. Sorry about that in the title. And we are coming to you live here on Show X. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Today, we are going to be talking a little bit about our discussion of various types of games. We had a little conversation ourselves of just like some of the games we've played in the past and how we can often categorize them as being a bit of either very long form games that are very long, very open. They allow you a ton of options for what players can do in them, or games that are a little more short in their duration that you play, but can be often described as being very focused and providing you a very specific kind of experience. And so that is the topic of the show today. We're going to be talking a little bit back and forth about what it is to be one of those types of games, how we categorize them, as well as just kind of the plus minus value that each offer. And so that is our goal of capturing some of what we like about gaming today. So as we kick things off, let's go ahead and get into my first question for you guys both is, what would you, since we just kind of set up as two overall categories, what would you define as being a long or short game? I'm going to adjust my camera here slightly because I'm too close to you guys.
Well, so I mean, the definition of a short game's probably evolved over time, because the classic short games are the old school arcade quarter munchers, right?
I agree.
Yeah,
actually,
that's
that's
true.
something I was throwing in a
You
list.
Get into something
Those-
like Smash TV.
Very short, right? They're
Yeah.
very short games.
Well, but again,
No,
they're
sure, but-
they are a short focused type of gameplay, right? I
but
agree.
If you didn't suck at a game like Black Tiger, you could beat Black Tiger in 3 hours, right? If you were willing to stand at a Black Tiger machine for that long, or perfect games of Pac-Man that take some number of hours.
Yes.
5 or 6 or whatever it is. But the contrast to that is, after a certain level, there's a dead spot in the Pac-Man maze that you can put Pac-Man for up to 15 minutes.
To just like rest.
So like if you have to use the head or whatever,
Yep.
you just put him in the dead zone and go do your business and get something to eat or something to drink, and then it doesn't matter how long it takes.
Well, it is amazing. No, it's amazing that people that played old arcade games found things like that in Pac-Man and such, because that game to me is so chaotic that to find a low area you could actually just hide was like, wow.
Yeah. Yep.
No, I agree with you, because the arcade games where you basically are dropping a quarter, I was lucky if I could play one of those more than maybe, I don't know, maybe a fighting game that I was really good at for like 20-ish minutes, maybe solid to go through the whole tier or something, depending on how long that took. You know, the old Mortal Kombat 2s and stuff like that. But beyond that, I mean, arcades had almost every mechanism to make you either have to add more quarters, right, to extend play via continue or old-fashioned gauntlet life bar enhancements, right?
Or Yellow Wizard is about to die.
The first pay-to-win game out there, I would argue.
No kidding, right?
Because you literally just kept paying to stay alive. To like you're saying, the modification of that, like in today's era, since arcade games basically don't exist, but I would say at least there are still games that are arcade-like. Some of the top-down shooters and stuff you can still get like Twin Dragons or something like that. Some of the more modern top shooter games, things like that are very arcade-ish, where you only have a fixed number of lives and things like that. Versus or other games like some of the ones I put on my list for short were things even that I would say any kind of game that might today only take you 10-ish hours to complete the entire story. At least that's for me, kind of where I was looking at it. Where longer games, and I don't have a fixed number, right? Because depends what you play. But games that allow a lot of additional things you can do besides just maybe the main storyline, that can turn into tens of hours, 20 and above, perhaps, per gameplay, just for that solo, that singular, like campaign type thing.
And think about it in this way: 10 to 20 hours per playthrough.
Yes. Not that you can't play one of these games over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, for one of
actually, that's a really good point. Yeah,
character builds, right? I do the all charisma, all luck, idiot savant build, and I've played that just recently for almost 2 days, and now I'm on to the it's still an idiot savant build, but it's the all I have to do is find one version of a weapon, and I just mod it and mod it and mod it until it's all uber.
Yep.
And I think I just found my sniper rifle, and I think the only thing I have to do to that sniper rifle is put the 50 cal receiver in it, and then it's going to be perfect. So yeah, the idea is you carry one sniper rifle, one combat shotgun, one combat rifle, one laser rifle, and then like a fat man.
And you can do all things.
Running around in power armor, and those are the 5 weapons you have, and you can do anything to anybody with those 5 weapons. And it's, you've heavily modded everything, so you only have to find one.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. The replayability is a key part. Like you're saying with Fallout, I think Fallout is one of those games where you can replay it, but it's not necessarily required, right? Well, it's got a replayability element to it, but it's not the number one thing. But for example, if you look at FTL, Faster Than Light, a single game, you might lose in the first, 5 minutes of the game. Does that mean it's over? Because technically you finished the game, right? Dying is part of finishing the game. You're not, but unlike many other games where there's a reload mechanism, you can go back to where you were. You're in FTL. You're not supposed to.
Any of the roguelikes,
even minus of
Brain, Isaac.
Yeah. Well, even with those, right? Any of those games where you have a finite because you can die element, because I think any game you could die and call it game over. Even I'm categorizing more like saying you played it all the way to completion. You were successful the whole way through. And that's why I go long short format, because FTL, even if you're successful all the way through, I think the full game still will only take you a matter of a couple hours to play a full match of FTL to completion. Whereas like Fallout, I would argue Fallout, but for me is a long game, because while you can play just if you only want to do main storyline only and never diverge from that, you might be able to beat it. And I think, and this is not talking like the people who are the record holders, right? The people who do super fast games done quick kind of nonsense. They break games, but just playing straight through, you're going to play it a long game. The Final Fantasy series, the I argue anything from Elder Scrolls, really most Bethesda, the Elder Scrolls, the Fallout series, like the Witcher series. I hadn't played it enough to say, but I was going to say Fable as a game and stuff like that. All the games that you put
Dragon Age,
tens of hours, because it just says it said it came back. I
noticed it's like struggling to load, and I have it on like 140p because I like to just have it, stream fast and not use all my bandwidth.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was struggling made me think either my internet's picked out, but I can hear you guys.
No, it just came back. That was a hiccup in the middle of things, and thankfully, it actually reconnected like it should. So good job.
Isn't that nice?
Good job, internets. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're back. I don't know what that hiccup was. I think because we were still talking, so that might have been mob crush.
I think we're quite. I think we agree that over time, the face of gaming has obviously changed, right?
Yes.
So not only the format and the length and the money behind games, right? I mean, the money that was put behind games in the 70s and 80s is, less than 1% of, I imagine, what was in Skyrim. Probably total, right? I imagine all the games in the 80s are probably less than maybe like 10% of Skyrim's
actual development
budget,
cost.
Right?
Well, so the entire video game industry in 81 or 82 was on the order of $3 billion. That's the entire industry. The entire video game industry for 2021 is now projected to be $160 billion.
Wow.
So, I mean, there is a lot of money at stake. Your point, Ken, is well made that the budgets have obviously gone up. I mean, how much budget can you put into a game that was made in 5.5 weeks versus something like Skyrim now that takes multiple years of development with huge teams, usually geographically diverse teams.
Yeah. It's millions of man hours,
No, your guys are right. The entire environment of game development has changed. But that aside, I think it's going back to like what was the core experience that those games all are trying to deliver. And so in this greater subject of kind of, and like I said, that was just a step one at kind of defining a long and short game experience in broad category strokes. Because Unit Zero puts in there like, with the different styles of games, I think defining short and long terms varies to some degree. Playing Galaga for more than an hour is long, relatively speaking. Agreed. But that's what I'm saying. The format of the game is a short format game. And an Orbs player playing longer than 3 minutes is long, where beating Final Fantasy VII in 20 hours is fast. True. And I'm not talking about an individual's ability to finish the game in whatever time frame, but I'm kind of distilling it down to a generic, if you're playing this type of game as a whole, what is the average gameplay length or style of game? Because I think the conversation, that's one thing that's, as we're trying to kind of show where we separate to some of these games, and I'm sure there's going to be games that kind of meld in between as we talk about various strengths of each style or each goal of game, is, what are the advantages that you get from building a game towards a certain style versus another, such that us as consumers, when you play those games, what we're getting out of them. And that's kind of where this conversation, I'm hoping we go.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important aspect of this entire discussion. Right? But let's go back to the very initial idea, right? We said we were going to talk about short games versus long games, and the differences between both, and why one is preferential, and what kind of person might prefer one over the other. So, for example, I've started playing a lot of Rocket League this week. I really enjoyed the game because I think it's just something you can pick up and go, and it's like a match is 5 minutes.
Basically,
that's 5 minutes. Technically, you complete the game in 5 minutes, right? Like, that's a game. So the replayability is incredibly important with that. Same with League of Legends, right? But each match is entirely different, even though the content is all the same. And I actually commented to some of my friends this week, how much time do you think went into the graphics behind Rocket League? Because it's about 8 years old or something now. I mean, Rocket League came out in... let me just say, it came out initially in 2015, so it's 5 years old. And for a 5-year-old game, it looks beautiful. It's really quite gorgeous. Even the grass effects on the field that you're running around. But the point is, how much graphics needs to go into making 10 arenas, and that's it. Like in Skyrim, you have a world, day and night cycles, weather systems. But then you look at Rocket League, and it's just an arena. Same with League of Legends. They made the graphics once. Admittedly, they had new skins for new characters and stuff like that as well. But that's pretty minimal content creation compared to something again like Skyrim, which they are really good at, or The Witcher. Good obvious examples of massive worlds.
Okay.
But the thing that initially brought me to this topic was, I think I was really surprised when I played God of War earlier this year because I loved it. It's one of my top 3 games of all time. Honestly, beautifully, beautifully made. Not just the story, but the graphics, everything about it is just pretty much perfect. The only thing that I said was bad about it was how short it was. But the more that I think about it, and the more that I meditate on the idea of this as a game, it needed to be short. It had to be. It was so filled with perfection that each second of gameplay felt like it was handcrafted. And to really have that experience, it can't be that long. I mean, an open world game like Fallout or Skyrim or The Witcher, there's a lot of time you just spend running around, right? You're just literally going from A to B. You're delivering messages. You're trying to find the monster. You're trying to find the secret. And yeah, you're exploring a beautiful land and everything, and you enjoy it. But I know that right now I'm also playing Red Dead Redemption very slowly on PlayStation. And I think to myself, oh, this is really pretty. But I also think to myself, I've seen this 100 times and I'm sick of this area. Right? Whereas I never felt that once in God of War. The entire game, every time I saw a new area, I was like in awe because it was truly handcrafted.
But the core gameplay loop in something like God of War is fundamentally different from the core gameplay loop in either Red Dead or Fallout or any of these games.
World, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos from a channel called Many a True Nerd.
Okay.
And he does a lot of Fallout analysis, and at first I was a little annoyed by it because it sounded like he was bagging on first-person Fallout, which I like. But then I realized that he's actually doing a legit compare and contrast between the old school and the new school, and talking about places where the old school did things right and the new school did things right, and places where neither of them have done things right, and places where both have done things right. So, good stuff. But the point of this is that the core gameplay loot of Fallout 4, for example, is loot, craft, explore, loot, craft. Right? So I go to a place, I grab stuff out of that place, I kill some bad guys maybe, I loot the bad guys, I loot the junk in the world, because the junk's all breakdownable to crafting parts. Then I come back to my settlement, I break down all the junk, I use that to craft better stuff, that then allows me to go farther out into the world to explore and loot things, to then bring back to the settlement to craft, and so on and so on. Which, when I'm in the mood for it, and I certainly am right now, is really, really compelling for a long time.
Okay.
So,
and
yeah.
No, okay. I agree.
Whereas the core gameplay loop of God of War may lend itself more to a shorter experience.
Well, because God of War, admittedly, it's a beat 'em up, right? It's essentially a side scroll beat 'em up, but modernized to a really extreme way. It's bad dudes, right?
I don't think I can even call it the original beat 'em up anymore.
But here's the key. I say it this way because the core mechanic, right, is that you are fighting against oncoming and increasingly difficult mobs over time, with additional elements of things like puzzles and some other aspects in there. And so there's more to it than that, but if I were to bring it down to just a core level, it's something like the old side-scroll beat-em-ups, but to an extremely modernized version. It's not that at all now. There's way more story and there's way more other stuff.
I think the mechanics can be called that, but I don't think that the game itself, because the mechanics of fighting are beat 'em up. You do have to press, certain combos, dodge attacks, defend and use your shield, correct times and all that. But it's also a game that can make you cry, and there's not many beat 'em ups.
No. Well, you say that unless you know the story behind something. But I'm just saying that was a core game mechanic, not the story element. Because if we were to talk just in right now the gameplay aspect of these kind of games, right? Something I've seen from a lot of short format games is they provide a very concise, if you will, gameplay mechanism. They may have some diversity and some way of kind of expanding or adjusting your gameplay throughout, but it's usually focused on a very specific gameplay mechanic. and doesn't stray very far from it, in my experience. And that's why I said, like, any of the short forms, like any first-person shooter pretty much is, I go kill stuff. And there may be some elements that blend, go a little further with, like, yes, some quick-time events, yes, some jump puzzles in the game or things like that. And even to the effect, like an extreme version of that being Portal, where you're not going and shooting things, but your whole point is puzzle solving, but your actual core mechanics of using the portals and the environments of the world out there don't really, they keep adding, and it becomes more complex strings of those uses of the mechanics, but it's the same basic jump puzzles, if you will, throughout the whole game. Where I see a lot of these long format games having beyond that, right? Like Fallout does focus on I kill things. But like you said, Todd, in your thing there's also the crafting element in there. There's the storage mechanics and things like that. And it goes into a level of depth that I would say that I've not really experienced in some of those first persons. You know, they have in, like, what is it, Bayonetta, that series, which I think is an amazing short form game, tons of fun to play. They have where you can craft, right? You can slightly adjust your weapon and which weapon you choose, but you're not really getting into the nitty gritty of it. Even the Call of Duty series, they give you now the ability to modify your guns. They have for your, you know, with different sights, different stocks, different things like that, but it's not really deep. It's slight pluses, slight minuses, but it doesn't really change the overall gameplay that you provide in doing so. And so there's all those kind of things that come into it, where I also see, what was another example? And we haven't touched it yet, but to an extreme, and I think it was both Ionis and Unit Zero have said it about MMOs. To me, MMOs being an extreme version of long format games. Games that are meant to have you come back and play in the same world, likely the same character or a handful of characters for arguably hundreds, if not thousands of hours, right? To continue to progress that same experience, what you're playing in them. And that in those, in order, I would say it's a necessity, I would say, because you have such a long play style, for people to have lots of things they can do in the game that diversify from just solving a basic messenger quest, right? Or basic kill number of mobs, that they have to add other elements like the crafting, the resource gathering, the different types of battling and such, to guild management and all these other aspects into the game to give you more to it. And I say this because one of the core things for me in my experience with these games, oh, hey, Leo Novid, thank you for stalking. It's been a while since I've seen your name pop up there, sir. But that for me, with those different kind of experiences, I think they each have their value, but like in the short form, when I have walked away from my playing Doom, the first Doom, which I think if I look into the actual gameplay was somewhere around 10-ish to 14-ish hours I had for just a single playthrough of it, even trying to find and finish like some of the collector stuff in it and find all the little Doom guys, find all the secret hidden things. I didn't get all the old maps.
You're talking
I missed some of those.
2016 Doom.
2016 Doom. Yeah, sorry, modern Doom,
so
not original.
We have to differentiate now.
Oh yeah,
well, but you're right, we do, because old Doom and new Doom. Because I only say it because I've yet to play Doom Eternal, which everyone says is awesome. But it gave me that same core mechanic that the original Doom did.
And by the way, Microsoft Bethesda, do not name a game Doom 2, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you for going Doom Eternal, and we'll see what they do with that further.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of those fun conversations. Side note, people, to the discussion and what happened to the market when everybody started buying the new Xbox Series X, that because one company, Sony, knows how to name things in an order that makes sense, and another company, Microsoft, has no effing clue how to name things in such a way that people can make any sense of it. And I'm also looking at you, Nintendo, that, you know, when people went to pre-orders, went on sale for the new Microsoft Series X, a bunch of people bought Xbox One X's thinking it was the new console, but it's last generations. And so when the Series X sold out, a lot of people bought Xbox One X's or S's and stuff like that. And oops. So please, companies, figure out how to do your naming conventions so that people don't get confused. We understand that retroing old things is neat, but could you at least put something on there that says that it's the next? Yes, side note. But in playing Doom, man, if Doom 2016 didn't give me a rush the whole way through. You know, I beat it in, like I said, 10-ish hours, but I had heartbeat adrenaline the entire time. It had such a focused soundtrack, and that changed with the experience. It had such a smart introduction of different levels of the enemies you fought against and how difficult they were at different times, that it was proper. And their old-fashioned mechanics of health and all the stuff they done was so focused. And that's the thing I see as one of the attributes that often comes from these short format games, is because they don't expect you to play for more than the X amount of time, they're really trying to give you a very specific experience when you do play. They want you to feel it in a certain way. And so I walked away where I finished the game, but I finished it with like this high of, ooh, that was something. All the way up to the last boss, right? Last boss, I knew it was him. I knew it was coming. I had everything built up for it. And I was like, let's go. And just, it was such a rush. And so finishing
they did such a fantastic job with aesthetics in 2016 Doom. From the and I say aesthetics, and it's really more than that, because it's the visuals, it's the soundtrack, it's the sound engineering, it's the glory kill mechanics, right? Because it's not the first time glory kills have been done.
No.
Like, glory kills have been done before. The Doom 2016 is them done correctly.
Yes.
Or the best form I've ever seen, at least. It's the lore. Right? Where Doom Guy, we don't know why Doom Guy has Doom Guy armor, but in Doom 2016, spoiler alert, he starts on a slab and he's pissed.
Oh, it's great.
Right? I mean, yeah, no, it's fantastic. Like, I love everything about it. I can't aim it anymore, as it turns out. But like, these skills deteriorate people, and I unfortunately have not practiced as much as I should have.
You just dropped that difficulty level one.
What's that?
You just dropped that difficulty one tier.
Yeah, well,
and we have to admit to ourselves that I'm no longer veteran. I have to go down to lead status.
One of the things that we talk about is taking small victories. At least I'm not a Kotaku writer. or a polygon reviewer. At least I can make it out of the first room after killing things
before I actually review a game.
Yeah,
7 out of 10. Too much water.
I've almost got enough confidence to try the tutorial for Cuphead.
Oh, dude, Cuphead is rough. Ooh, I've only gotten so many levels in. No, I got you. Oh, dude.
So if you're a gaming journalist, you can't do the tutorial. One. Like, it's too hard.
Yeah.
So I've almost got enough. Like, if I make it through another couple of levels of Doom, then I'll be ready to try the Cuphead tutorial.
Okay. So something on this, and Ken, you said this about your experience with God of War. I think I heard this from Utah talking about your experience with Doom. I'm sure you would have similar feelings when you talk about like Super Meathead, when you talk about games like Braid, like Cuphead, all these games that are actually really dang tough, but are essentially short format. For me, playing Moss in VR, which is amazing. Half-Life Alyx in VR, which is amazing. When I finished any of those games, I finished Moss in VR, and I was just like, set controller down, take off VR headset, and kind of took a moment to reflect. Like, that was an experience, right? I just did this thing that tore me through it the whole way. Versus, well, I was gonna say versus like some of these long format games, playing in all the way to like WoW, to me finishing Oblivion and Skyrim and some of these other games that are just super long games. I still haven't gotten through Witcher 3, but people I know playing through like the Mass Effect series and stuff like that, and how much they love the series and everything with it. And yet I'm wondering if the experience when you finish, even some of the ones that do have an end, not just the MMOs that go on forever, but like a Mass Effect that has a definitive end for each story, to like for when I finished, the main storylines in Skyrim and Fallout 3 and such, because I never finished 4, but in 3 and such, I got to the end and personally I was like, okay, I finished the game.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
you're almost glad because you're tired.
so a couple of things about that. The final boss in the end of Fallout 3 is not great. Like, I think we can all agree on that. If you've rolled
honestly,
the end credits or seen the end of Fallout 3, like it's not fantastic. The end of Fallout 4 is somewhat more satisfying because it feels like you did a lot more to affect the world at large.
Okay.
Like, I could spend, again, depending on the player build or the character build, like I could spend, let's say, 36 hours, right, exploring and playing in Fallout 3 and or Fallout 4. And I would go exploring and I would kill dudes and I would become super powerful and do all the leveling up stuff and then finally finish the main storyline and roll the end credits. And in Fallout 3, I would be like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Spoiler alert, the DC ruins gets fresh water at the end. And it's like, yeah, that's important. It's an irradiated wasteland. Every piece of water is radioactive, so having fresh water is a big deal, and it can be kind of rare. However, like a shadowy group of people that are doing research in post-apocalypse land that's kidnapping people and replacing them with synthetic bodies, and you really don't know who the good guys are per se. By the time you get done, and like either you blow up the institute or whatever, something there's a tectonic shift in the power balance of the Commonwealth at the end of Fallout 4, whereas the Capital Wasteland, things are not all that different from when you started in Fallout 3.
Okay.
Like, it just the actions that you take in Fallout 3 to complete the main storyline are not affecting the world at large nearly as much as the actions that you take in Fallout 4.
Okay, so
by the end of the main storyline.
So saying like Fallout 4 is a good example of where they did a better job of wrapping up an overall storyline. Do you feel like when you compare that to the overall experience and perhaps games that did provide a story in that short format, like the God of War series, like those, Bayonetta, like I was mentioning, to some of those, do you feel like it provides that same level of completion, even down to like the old Metroids and some of those kind of games, that for me, in a single player experience, especially, but short format kind of story driven experiences like that, one of the things I've struggled with MMOs and other big games, or games like what you mentioned with the Fallout and other games that provide you with so many options as to how you play your character and evolve it throughout the storyline, is kind of that satisfaction of what you really accomplished in playing the game. And so with short format games, I have found that by the end of the game, you have done this, that you were playing through this whole process to get to. And again, I'm mentioning ones with the story elements and stuff like that, but at the end, I have resolved said problem and we're done, because I only needed to finish that chapter in what may be an overall bigger story. Where long format games, I feel like you do so many pieces of that. Like you have what might be a slight arc that was somewhat epic, and I finished Naxxramas or something, or I finished some big boss along the way, and it has some effect. But because often it feels to me those games are providing so many different options, like the Bethesda series with Fallouts and stuff, that I'm going to choose this faction over that faction. But like you said, Todd, in the end, none of them are definitively good or bad. It's more moral choice. Where, and maybe it's an abstraction that's not real as though life, but in those shorter games, you tend to get good, bad. And I have conquered bad, and I am therefore good. right? Or something to that
There's
effect.
a lack of nuance in shorter games.
So I'll say this: taking a short game like Bulletstorm and a long game like Fallout. The first time that I rolled the end credits in both of those games, I felt, I would say, relatively the same. Like, hey, I finished Bulletstorm, or hey, I finished Fallout 4. That was great. I was more compelled to chase moments in Fallout 4 than I was Bulletstorm.
Okay.
Like, there's no doubt in my mind that there are awesome things that you can do in Bulletstorm, like pulling enemies into you and then kicking them and shooting them while they're about to be impaled on spikes and all kinds of fun stuff like that. But there was never the pull for me in Bulletstorm to figure out the equivalent of reverse pickpocketing grenades on the people, like Fallout. Like that is just hilarious. And I just, the first Idiot Savant build, where you put all of your special points in charisma and luck, and you run around the world that way, banking criticals and detonating heads sort of on command.
Okay.
Type of stuff. I just never had. I never had the pull to recreate those kind of moments in a game like Bulletstorm.
Okay.
I won't have the pull to recreate those kind of moments in Doom.
So with that in mind, that's an interesting point you bring up, is a potential advantage of those long format, more open games. And Ken, you might have a thought on this as well, with the idea that in games you've played that are long format, like the Fables and stuff like that, moments you've been able to take to customize your character and choose the way you want to play the game. Like for me, it was always, snipey, stealthy in every Bethesda game ever, right? Every one of the long format ones. Like let me snipe someone for X times extra damage and watch head explode first. Ancillary, I may have to actually pull out a Sharpie bit and point at them. But the ability to, like you said, Todd, sneaky grenade people in the pocket, to Ken, I believe, if I'm trying to remember your pedigree with Fable and stuff, choosing how to build up your household and who you romance and the kind of character you were playing, with that ability to focus on what you find entertaining in a more broad, long format game. Does that potentially provide a different, if not more, level of satisfaction and joy in playing the game how you want, versus how a lot of short format games pretty much have to limit you to a certain confined way of playing the game, of how much you can play your character one way or another?
That's a really good question. And that turns into two questions for me. One is, why do I make decisions in the games that I'm playing when I can make decisions? Why do I go a certain direction? Like why do I choose certain morality or certain builds or romance options? By the way, my romance options are always, if I can help it, none. I don't care about romancing my characters with others unless it provides an in-game benefit like plus percentage to damage or something. I don't like. I would make my character just asexual, because I don't feel like, if I'm playing Mass Effect, I'm trying to save the freaking universe from aliens. I'm not trying to screw an alien. I'm trying to save the world from the bad guys, and I'm not trying to have sex. God's sakes. You're supposed to be a warrior, What are you doing?
But as an example, right? You can choose how much time you put into relationships or not in a long format game.
That's true.
In Fallout 4, I built almost 0 homes places because I did not care about the build mechanic, where I know people who got every mod to customize every ability and built multi-story mansions with all of the auto defenses and things like that, right? And so there's a difference there, which is interesting.
Required to fill the meters, right? It'd be like defense requirement low. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to drop 5 turrets in the middle of the town. They're not,
and then I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to leave my town because I don't give a rat's ass. I want to go pew things outside of town, and you guys are there to sell me shit.
Not for the other characters in the game to play a game,
But see, gentlemen, you need perk points. Perk points are a commodity. And so the more times that you gain experience points is more, the closer you get to getting that next perk point. And
totally
so
right.
you can have the 4x criticals, and you can have 5 critical strikes at your command, and you can carry an extra 200 pounds of junk. When you go through the Roboco factory, and it's like, oh, this has springs, and this is aluminum, and this has screws, and this has nuclear material, and now I can build the Guardian's laser rifle of face evaporation. Like, it's
that stuff's all neat, but I'd rather just get my XP by doing, the missions and the story that I actually enjoy. I have at times micromanaged my games and tried to be as maximum efficiency and do all the side quests and do all the side events and collect all the secret items. And what I've always found is that I burn out before I get to finish the game story. So I'd much rather, I've learned to cut that down and focus more on the story over time.
So here's a question for you then, kind of as a follow-up to that statement, Ken. Have you ever caught yourself trying to, I won't say break, because that's the wrong word, but utilize game mechanics in an extreme fashion?
On a way to maximize effect,
right? Yeah. Okay, here's a good example. When I used to play Pokemon when I was like 12, and it was Pokemon Yellow for Game Boy, right? And I remember the first thing I did was I caught my first Pokemon, and I was like, well, I'm not going to leave this starter until level 20. Like, you're supposed to leave when he's like level 3 or 4 or something, right? And I was like, no, I'm just going to grind. I don't know why. I just thought I got it and then suddenly I didn't. The rest of the game was so easy because I had this massive jump at the start. And, even when I think I can't remember what I chose, probably Charmander, right? So even though it's a fire type Pokemon, I'd go against my rival who had a water type, and I'm like, I don't give a crap. I'm 20 levels higher than you.
You just did the brute force, like, yes, you might be immune to this and take less damage, but because I do 10 times more, it still hits you like a brick.
Exactly. I did the same thing in WoW. I'd go in some areas. I'd try to do every single quest, even though I didn't need to. I can go to the next area, but I'd rather get into the next area when I'm level like 53, and the recommended levels are like 48 to 51.
Yeah, you are every one of those memes I see, which is like, some super overpowered brute of a character walking in against some little timid thing saying, when you leave the starting area at level 30 and run into your first boss in the next level.
Exactly. But I enjoy the opposite as well. I also enjoy going over to a stupidly overpowered enemy when I'm really underpowered, and then beating it by,
skill and figuring out how to Right.
Right.
I enjoy both because then you can get a huge amount of XP, and that can then go back to the original tactic by killing it again and again, right?
But arguably, both of those examples you given are only really available, I would say, in longer format games.
Short form games.
Because short form games, they don't really give you that opportunity to maximize leveling up. I think the closest I ever got to that in a short one for me was, and this is a very finite example, but was when when the gaming group years ago did our epic Super Are You Kidding Me? This is effing really happening Game Fest-a-Palooza for 2 weeks of Game Fest. And we went to the arcade because we were doing a competition for points. And on the arcade, we rolled dice to see which machine we'd hit. And when we hit the Kung Fu machine, I never left the first level because I learned that you got more points from punching, and that the first level, based on my ability to progress the game and how far I could get on a single quarter, I could get more points staying in the first level, basically just punching enemies until the time ran out, than I could progressing the levels and getting to the level with the pots and the snakes and such, that I would more likely die and get less points for than if I just stayed and kept killing things on the first. So, like, maximizing just for a score, right? And that was a unique situation just for a score. But really, that's not all that dynamic or much of a option or things you can do differently. It's like in Super Mario or the original, Donkey Kong, same thing. Staying on a level and getting the hammer just to make sure you can get max points and jumping barrels long enough, because maybe I'm better at that than I am the spring level, that if I get to it, I'm just going to die, and then I only got so many points.
So that's the difference between casual gameplay and competition gameplay.
Yeah, just playing for fun versus that.
Now we're subdividing things not necessarily into short form and long form, but casual versus competition play. And for competition play, Wayne, I'm 100% behind all of the things that you're saying. I was going to say short form game that has a long duration sort of, I won't call it a variant, but a long duration form that abuses not really the leveling up mechanic, but the character stat mechanic, is Isaac breaking runs.
Oh, I haven't ever seen those.
So in the Binding of Isaac, you can get this item called the D20. And the D20 will allow you to re-roll any item that's not on a pedestal. So coins and keys and bombs and hearts, batteries are all things that you can re-roll.
Okay.
There's a shop item called Sackhead, and what Sackhead does is increases the chance of a bag being one of those items that drops on the ground. And a bag has multiple ground items in it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
What you can do is if you can get a D20 and a couple of batteries, and what a battery does is recharge a use item all the way to the top, so you can use it more than once. And it takes a little bit of doing, but you can essentially create infinite money, infinite keys, infinite bombs, infinite batteries, and then use that infinite money to buy every shop item. To the point that when the shop item runs out of inventory, when you run out of shop items, it starts going through the regular item list.
Okay.
Right? Okay, and then you can get an item that's called Chaos. And then what Chaos does is it takes the item lists from all of the different item rooms and basically condenses multiple tables down into one table. So then you could buy every item in the game from the shop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you can now break when you would normally have access to items. And
essentially you get every item. Like if you're willing to put in the time, but it takes like well over an hour to do that, even at peak efficiency. Well, and to really do it right, you're making all the coins in a different room from the shop and just going back and forth.
Well, to me, that's more, like you said, exploiting a game mechanic in it, but it's not really a big option of how you choose to play your character or how you approach the end goal, right? It's more like, I found this way to get the items I would get eventually sooner, so I can just stomp everything now to do the level up mechanic early, essentially.
Sure,
with items.
But that's the thing about Isaac, right? You only get a finite number of items in a run, and you may not see an item for 10 runs.
The random element of it that makes it unique.
Right, because it's a roguelike.
Yep.
So being able to buy every item in the game at the shop, and in one of the two expansions for Rebirth, they made it so that you could collect 2 Steam sale items, and the first Steam sale item reduces the price of shop items by 50%, and the second Steam sale item reduces the cost of shop items by 50%.
So that makes it even easier to just accomplish. Yeah,
you can do it that way where if you can get 2 Steam sales and a shop, all the shop items are free.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so it allows you to break it very easy. Well, so going back, because even by Binding of Isaac, I'm still thinking to the level of one of the questions I had that I touched on earlier about the experience between a long format game and that focus element, where we talked about the kind of character you can play and the good versus evil. Something I was struggled with in especially MMOs and some of the long form games to allow that flexibility has been really whether you kind of talked about to some degree with Fallout, Todd, at least the 3 and 4 comparison, truly affect the end state of the game. And to more of the level of, are you a hero? And how in most short form content, right, I feel like the whole point of those is putting you centrally in the role of the hero, the one entity in this world that can affect the necessary change to save something. Where for me, in a lot of the long format games, while I feel like they try to provide some of this, that a lot of them struggle to really make you feel the hero. And arguably, I'm really looking at MMOs in this case as one of the primary examples of this. And so, like, Ken, when you were playing WoW back in the day and stuff like that. Did you ever feel like in the story being told and the characters you played that you were absolutely a critical entity, that your existence in the world was necessary?
Oddly enough, yes. But I didn't feel that in the first few expansions or in vanilla. I mean, like realistically, in vanilla, you're just a part of an army, right? I mean, even when you're doing 40-man raids, and if you take down Ragnaros or Nax, you're still just part of the Alliance or the Horde army. You don't seem like the critical element. But in the World of Warcraft expansion, with the Demon Hunters, what's it called, Legion, in that they turn the tables around and focus on that specifically. You become the leader of your class. So even though there's everybody else is also leader of the class, the story tells it as you are the new lead shaman, lead paladin, lead whatever, and they do it so well. You get your own little base in a way that's not cringy like it was in the previous expansion before that. I can't remember what it's called.
I can't keep up with all of them. Cataclysm or whichever.
Little base in Draenor, Warlords of Draenor.
Oh.
You had your little base that you'd upgrade, and it was like, okay, that's nice, but it was kind of cringy. It felt very unnecessary. Whereas in this expansion, Legion, your little base actually felt like the hold of that class. The Shaman's Hall, the Paladin's Hall. You really did feel like a really important element of the story that like you. And that was the great thing about getting all these weapons. Like you'd get Thrall's hammer, right? And you'd be like, wow, I am the shaman now. It's no longer Thrall, it's passed on to me. And that felt great. Sorry, Todd, that was my phone. It's funny that a phone vibrating in Michigan can make somebody in Norway think that their phone's going.
Well, it's so I always have it on vibrate nowadays. Ordinarily, it used to be that it was connected to my Fitbit, but they're not in a way that messages vibrate my wrist anymore. So now I'm super
tuned in.
Super tuned into any time that there's a vibraty type of noise. Like I just immediately instinctively look at my phone because it has been mentioned that I'm not necessarily very good about picking up my phone when I'm summoned. So
I see.
Yeah.
So back to the point. Sorry, I changed topic. I don't think many MMOs do achieve that. I think MMOs especially are very guilty of making you just one of many. And even though you end up helping probably thousands of people with individual tasks, many of which are, save lots of children and, save the country, save the world, you end up just being like, okay, great, quest completed. Somebody's really happy. The world's forgotten about you already. But that didn't really happen in that one expansion. So WoW did do it right with that one expansion.
So you brought up a good point where, and admittedly, technology has improved, especially in MMOs. The advent of shards and being able to do like momentary, very specific progression of story that changes the world around you visibly in an area that was populated by many, I think has helped in telling a narrative and bringing you more as a focus. One of the challenges I've always run into in MMOs is one that's just an easy target is anytime you have a big, massive multiplayer thing where multiple people are there, is that you go to that one quest giver that's saying, or the, turn in that's like, you have done it. I recently started playing a little bit of Black Desert Online with folks because it was on sale for like $3. And it has the same challenge. It's like fun and active in how you play, but every quest I go to turn in and there's a mob of people sitting there around the quest giver all doing the same thing, right? And so just the immersion aspect of it doesn't even exist. Like, yes, hero. Thank God you don't hear everybody's thing because then it would just be like this nonsensical
Well,
mess.
they do it with the very special quest, right? Like when you hand in like Onyxia's head, right?
They'll
and the
whole
city actually hears like, this warrior has killed Onyxia.
Yeah, you get that moment of like the moment that you're highlighted, but then it goes right back into you and everybody else. Where at least in single player, even long format games, you get more of the sense that the world continues to acknowledge you as being something big. Final Fantasy series, right? Final Fantasy VII for me is being one of those main ones. Your group is always doing this massive thing to struggle and change, and you keep interacting with other groups and armies that are trying to do bits and pieces, but it's really your group that's doing the main stuff, right? So you still get to be the centerpiece, if you will, of whatever's happening.
Speaking of 7, I always had this idea in my head that there was another Final Fantasy VII game where you played as the Turks?
Oh,
and the Turks were doing all the same kind of things as you were, the progressing levels and doing stuff, but the player on the other side was just bad.
Oh,
because of the fact that, I mean, they show up all the time through all of Disc 1, right? And maybe
they
part
keep
of
coming
Disc
in,
2?
yeah.
Yeah. And maybe even into Disc 3 now that I think about it, because I think you see at least, yeah, because when you fight Hojo, you fight 2 Turks first. And then you end up fighting Hojo at the end, if I'm remembering that correctly. It's been a long time.
I can't speak to it. It's been a long time.
Yeah. But yeah, I always figured, because they always show up at the same. They always show up someplace you are, and they're always looking for the same thing you are.
Gotcha. And yet you're the one actually doing.
Right? So
everything.
It's like I had to ride a chocobo and cross the snake-infested swamp to get into this cave. But the Turks had a helicopter, so they didn't have to cross the swamp. They just flew to the other side of the cave and went in a different direction. But we're still looking for a piece of materia or whatever. I don't know. It just it was always kind of, in hindsight, somewhat silly to me that.
Well, it could be a fun, if not like, gosh, if you could just mod 7 to create your own side storyline. Wouldn't it be great to have like the Turk mod that you like find yourself either just behind, like a day late, $1 short, or
I'll tell you what, you can stop doing development on Final Fantasy VII Remake and make a Turks version of Final Fantasy VII, but give us the old mechanics, and we'll all thank you and play it.
It would be hilarious.
Yeah, it would be funny.
So as we look at these things, I was trying to think of other mechanics or things that come into these different kinds of games and where they get their advantages, where the development allows for more focus, more benefit of a certain area versus another, and those kind of things. And I was going to go into like audio and some of the other stuff, but I feel like a lot of those actually lean heavily towards long format, because they have to worry about someone staying in something for so long. But I want to get to that after the break. And so we're going to take a quick break. Unfortunately, my Winamp broke. So instead, I'm going to put on a little bit of bed music here, or break music from the Pretzel app, which allows us to play whatever random songs, which more likely will get us in trouble with all the bots out there about what songs are allowed and not, but we'll see. And so we're going to take a quick break. I'll play at least a song, if not 2, in this to see what we get up to. And then, let's see, the next one's about 3 minutes. So we'll go for this song on Pretzel, and we'll be back right after this. Everybody, go take your bios. Be right back. You're watching ShowX here on twitch.tv, and we very much enjoy having you. Feel free to share us to all your friends out there to have them come join in the conversation. We'd love for our numbers to bump up, because really we are supported by you. And so feel free to share us out on whatever social medias you have, even in your Discords. If you're out there talking with your other friends, gaming and such, let them join in the conversation as well. So I'll be back in about 3 minutes or so right after this. You're watching ShowX.
You look to the sun.
All right, I'm going to let it keep playing until everyone else gets back here.
Feel you're on the run. It seems you don't know how to live. And when we lose our way, we all deserve to find belief. 'Cause we're on top of the world.
That is not what I want to do.
Our lives in front of you and me.
All right. And everybody, we are back. Welcome back to the show. So the nice thing, at least, is Pretzel, I finally got to work right. So that's why you're getting the pings in the chat there saying what's playing, since I got their bot to work with it. That's part of their license thing that says you can use this as long as we're allowed to interrupt your chat with links to what we're playing. And so it's like,
by the way, one sign in which you know you've hit rock bottom is when you are drinking Polish vodka in Norway.
So my question, though, for you, Todd, would be, in the alcohol you can acquire around Norway, where you're at, do they sell liquor in plastic bottles?
No.
I asked that because when you brought that up and saying that was rock bottom, it still looked like it was a glass bottle. Because
it was a glass bottle, yes.
One of the definitive
I have never
things.
Seen plastic bottles for booze in Europe.
Oh no, they definitely exist, and definitely in America.
Well, in the U.S., one of the definitive things here is when you can buy a large quantity of an alcoholic staple, a liquor, and it comes in a very easy to carry and drop and not lose plastic vessel, it is likely of a lower shelf and thus price.
I was thinking about the 3-liter plastic bottle of Malibu.
Well, whatever liquor you choose.
I've seen some nice brands that actually have plastic bottles here, which shocked me. I always had the opinion that plastic bottle meant cheap, but that doesn't seem to always be the case here.
It still does to a degree. Now, granted, I also break that paradigm a little bit because when I was recently at a park hanging out with friends to do a going away for my friend who is back home now in Australia, quarantining for the next 2 weeks in a hotel room, unable to leave, I picked up a box of wine to share with the group that is like 3 liters of a red blend wine. It was not inexpensive. It was still like $20 for the box wine. So it's not always the vessel it comes in for the quality, but in general terms, I think it has been accepted for so long here in the United States that plastic tends to equal a less vintage brand or whatever, if you will, of liquor.
I think we should promote this, even though I disagree with the idea. I think we should promote the idea because plastic is tacky no matter what. Don't use plastics.
Word. So I will say this. I can't think of anything that's sold in the liquor store in Norway that comes in plastic bottles. And I will...
Or soda.
I'm going to have to... Well, so soda is, but I don't know that they sell soda in liquor stores, right?
Oh, okay.
Because the liquor store is run by the government, essentially. And it's in fact called the wine monopoly.
Oh, interesting.
If you translate the name literally from Norwegian to English, the wine monopoly is
I appreciate their truth in advertising.
Yeah. And
it's not even a monopoly though, is it?
You buy beer in grocery stores, and you can have beer delivered from grocery delivery services like Colonial, but you can't get hard booze in the grocery store. Like you have to go to the liquor store to get wine and hard booze that way. So my recollection is all of the stuff that's sold in the Norwegian liquor stores is glass. Ordinarily, if I buying anything like that, I would go to Sweden.
Okay.
Because it's significantly cheaper. And there's a better selection. And I want to say most, if not all of that is glass too. But the selection is so big that...
Oh, no, I was curious because like you said, when you brought that up and it was glass and you said cheap, basically, I was like, huh. It sure looks like a glass bottle.
I wasn't trying to insinuate cheap, just Polish.
Sorry, my mistake.
I bought the Polish vodka in Sweden, so.
Okay. That was my mistake. And an update for you, Todd. I don't know if you know, but in Colorado, we finally did open up where you can buy regular well, not booze, but regular like beers and such in grocery stores again and such.
It's not 3-2 anymore?
Nope. They totally did away with that.
There you go.
Every grocery store opened up whole aisles of actual regular, craft beers, which is awesome.
That's going to be tough for the liquor stores.
Oh, they still do well because they still have all the hard stuff and wine.
Yeah.
But anyhow. So back on topic of discussion, one of the things going into the break that I had been thinking about as we talked about kind of the experiences that these different types of games can provide, and disclaimer to all of you guys, I play both, and it just kind of, in many cases, depends on my mood. But I was initially going to go with the old idea of like soundtrack, because the overall presentation of a lot of the short games, I say, is very focused and gives you some very neat things. And one that's really great for a soundtrack was Braid. Handcrafted, hand-drawn game that had beautiful sound associated with it, and I actually listened to it separately. But then it stopped me a bit because I said, but at the same time, I think if I were to make a playlist of any one game's music, the long format games have significantly more. And in lots of cases, like more epic and resounding music, because they do have to expect a player might have to stay in an environment for hours listening to the same soundtrack, right? You go through just WoW music,
right?
Oh yeah, all the Bethesda ones, the WoW ones.
Music, Jeremy Soule. His music is beautiful. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Which is a shame because I think he came out he was had a rape allegation or something actually. So I've been uncertain about it's that thing of creative
people can do bad things too. Creative people can do bad things too.
Regardless,
if you choose to support someone in the future, be aware. Don't be mad at supports you had in the past.
Yeah,
that'll be my advice on that one.
What a good principle. We're a principled podcast.
Wow.
Hey, I will slightly expose some of my thoughts on this beyond just the gaming side of things.
But there's some beautiful music that has to last a long time. So you'll often find that like an area will have maybe like 10 songs attached to each, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes long. That can then get interrupted with combat music, for example, or nighttime, daytime music. And then you'll cross a border and then some other music will begin. But you have to have it as sort of ambient and not too oppressive, except for maybe battle music, where obviously you're supposed to, if you're playing Devil May Cry, you're supposed to have battle music. And there it's like death metal. It's awesome. I always thoroughly enjoyed the Devil May Cry battle music. But same with Skyrim, you'll have the battle drums and everything, it has to be atmospheric and in your face, but when it's ambient, you want to also be mixed with weather sounds and such, so it feels more realistic and calming.
The first time, and I gotta give Wrath of the Lich King credit for this. The first time I went to the undead starting area in Wrath, that sort of looked like Norway, like the Norwegian coast, where it's all these high cliffs and it's sheer down to the sea. And the music that they played in that area, where it was pseudo bagpipey, like it was kind of Scottish, but also kind of maybe Scandinavian if you squinted hard enough.
Nice.
And I was just like, oh my god, I never want to leave this place. Like it's all spread out, and the thing's all right, I suppose. But I could just spend all day listening to that music.
The overall ambiance and feel of that whole area for you was drawn.
Yeah, so good.
Well, so good. with that, it's kind of curious though, because and I agree. I think the soundtracks that we get from a lot of those longer games are more epic, are more meaningful and long term, and like just deep, if you will. But at least from my experience, because maybe I didn't spend enough time in those, I find that I can hear a song from the short-term ones and instantly identify where it came from.
Elevator
action. Right? You can play the Mario soundtrack anytime, almost any level. I can tell you, well, that's World 1, that's underground, that's the water level, that's, and I just like instantly, because they are in a way so simple and repetitive on some of those games that I just know it instantly, where other games like the long forms, I'll sometimes think, this feels like an Assassin's Creed song, right? This feels like a song that I would play in the Witcher series. But at the same time, it's like fantasy soundtrack, ABC. And so it's Skyrim-esque, Witcher-esque, all those various ones. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, I enjoy all of the music, but I wonder if there's not a difference, almost like a commercial versus a movie or a television show intro versus, that you can hear it and just be like, boom, I know what that is because I'm only going to hear it, or maybe I hear it so repetitively because you always start out World 1-1 on Super Mario Brothers, that dun 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 dun, and you just know what you're doing instantly. That compared to the intro to some others, although even that, like the intro to Final Fantasy, you can probably play that and I'll be like, oh yeah, and I'll be into it such. So maybe music for me isn't as solid a point to focus on. But one of the things I will go back to when it comes to kind of the gameplay and the look feel of the various games that are in these is the like interaction with the engine, the focus on how well it plays. Because as an exemplar on the short format one, Doom series 2016 and Eternal, holy cow, if that is not one of the most efficient engines in existence. Like
it's so good.
Right, to the point now, like I can play it on a 1080 regular, not TI, at 4K at over 60 frames per second, all details maxed. It's where people say when you're looking at a new graphics card, it doesn't really make sense to talk about the performance of the Doom engine because it's so damn good. Like the fact that you're getting 300 frames per second, at 4K in a 3090 really doesn't mean anything. Okay? Nobody has that monitor, so it doesn't even matter. But
Coming up on Show X, working on game engines for 30 years increases the quality of your game engines. Study fine.
but the idea that, when I play a game like Mirror's Edge, it just runs so well in the experience I'm getting. When I play Battlefield 5, the campaign, and we'll get into at some point here the actual multiplayer of both of these kind of formats you want for the games that provide it. But the single player experiences to me have been such a refined and specific and choreographed experience for what I get at certain scenes that for me have blown my mind. When I've gone through a little sequence and I get that feel and build up and then they present something to me that is so right there for me to see. In Crisis, going through the first time where you get to experience aliens and their first introduction to like the aliens coming out and flying about, to getting into the alien ships and the first time you get into anti-gravity and stuff like that, or gravity-free zones and play, that it was just like, holy cow, that's amazing. As Sean Caster talks about Portal again, when you first go to the old section in Portal 2, from the new section that you were basically used to, and you start dealing with the goo versus the portals, and how that just, the experience they crafted for that to me was amazing. Like I was just in it, and suddenly like, oh my God, this world, this realm. Where you talked about, Todd, going into WoW in certain zones and areas that gave you a whole feel for it. But I feel like there's a difference there that I've experienced in how really crafted a moment can be. Not completely, because even then, like cutscenes and story elements in the Final Fantasy and other long formats there are pretty damn good. In one of those games styles that I feel like is maybe an in-between, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like the Warcraft games, like Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, like top-down RTSs that to me kind of have their bit long format, at least the way I played, because I'm like turtle build all resources and go crush the enemy. Kind of play where they're also telling a fairly specific story, but you're still focused on your character. But they still allow some freedom in how you advance each level. Do you go and focus on just these units? Do you build a massive base and turtle crawl? What do you do, right? That I feel like kind of maybe Bridget, but my experience has been that in the single players, I get much more like drawn into a lot of the like, and here we're showcasing this moment. Do you guys feel the same, or do you have moments in some of the long format that you're like actually like a crafted? You're entering this new thing. You're dealing with a new character. One of the other hybrids I think is like Borderlands. I put as a hybrid one because when you go, it's got some levels that kind of cross between where it's still an FPS, but they also do the RPG aspect of it. And they give you way more freedom of craft or ability choice and stuff than most just FPSs. And when you get into a certain realm, the way they provide the voiceover of characters talking to you, or as you go into a final boss for a levels thing, they introduce the boss in a certain way, and the whole time leading up to it, they've had conversations about the boss you're about to hit. And so when you hit the one, it's like Moxie saying, well, that's my ex. Let's not talk about those times because right. And you see him and he's a, the guy with half his head like impaled or something. I forget which one it was.
Yeah, no, it's Mr. Shank.
Thank you, Mr. Shank. Yeah, right. Yeah. And so it had moments of like, boom, here it is. Do you feel like either format has an advantage when it comes to pressing you with like a cinematic moment, something that is really drawing you into the story, the display, the feel of what you're experiencing? Or do they both succeed and have the ability to succeed?
It depends on if we're constricting our definition of moment to something that's game narrative or game world and not necessarily player created, right? Like the introductions in the Borderlands series, like the first time, it's one thing to have Dr. Zed tell you about Nine Toes. Yep. It's another thing to make it into the arena where you fight Nine Toes and see the little cutscene where and then the introduction flashes up, and they're giving the bad guy bosses the same sort of stylized intro. What do you want to call them? Like stills, I guess.
Yeah, when they do the little they do the interesting thing and it stops
where he
and says their name.
Walks in and he crotch chops and it flashes Nine Toes. Open paren. Also, he has 3 balls. Close
yes.
He's getting the right. The boss character is getting that same still that the player characters got in the introduction. Like if you just let the game roll and you don't press start and you let it, the game do its sort of on boot up thing.
Yep.
Where it's introducing the 4 characters to you, like that was really cool.
Oh man, Borderlands had one of the best intros.
With the original Borderlands?
Yeah, the song, the bus ride, all the
Yeah. That's like I love that Cage the Elephant song. Like it's
that's
so
what
good.
made it for me. Didn't even know who Cage the Elephant was until that song. And then it came on the radio. It was like the Borderlands song.
Yeah. That made it into my playlist as soon as I heard it, and with the way that game was done. How is it? I'm sorry, I'm going to aside and then I'm going to finish my point. How is it that Gearbox managed to screw up Borderlands so bad? I don't understand. Like they had it.
So all they
needed to do is refine it and add more.
1 was great. And 2 was still pretty darn good. And introduce some new things in 2 that were great, because I will give all the credit in the world for Tiny Tina and Ashley's performance in that was phenomenal. And then 3, they just like, wait, you mean you want us to continue to make a funny, witty thing? Like, but we fired that whole staff. We don't actually employ them anymore.
I'm sorry. Back to the point. So I think it depends on what you mean by moments. Like the first time you see the Pride win come in Fallout 4.
Okay.
Like you get out of Fort Hagen. You get out of Fort Hagen after killing Kellogg, right? And you get the items that you need, and you finally you're on the trail of the Institute, and you pop out of Fort Hagen, and all of a sudden this giant blimp with multiple vertibird escorts comes in from off screen. And you hear this booming voice that says, "We are the Brotherhood of Steel. We mean you no harm. We are here for peace."
That was a badass thing, yeah.
Do not F with us, and we will not F with you, essentially. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. But to see that come in, right? And like that's a narrative moment, too. On the other hand, Fallout 3 didn't have those, per se. But I went and chased my own moments.
Okay.
Dumping all the skill points I possibly could into lockpick so that I could have maxed out lockpick by about level 7. So when I made it to Rivet City, I could finish the Replicated Man quest and get A321's plasma rifle as soon as possible.
Going back to the ability to get high-end equipment earlier in game to be able to then
one of the
stomp.
best weapons in the game, and you can get it before the end of Act 1.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, before the end of Act 1.
Morrowind, you could get a full set of glass armor at level 1. You just had to go in and put a bucket on the head of the store owner that was doing it, so that he couldn't see, go in the back room and just take it all off the wall so he didn't see you steal it.
I love that you can still do that in Skyrim. That was so good. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
But you're right, things like that. So, well, you mentioned like the ability to create your own narrative verse, and I would say, while there's an advantage to me to being able to do that, because arguably you create your own narrative, there's a certain level of personal attachment and meaning that you provide with that, compared to a story where it's provided for you, right? But on the flip side, at least for me, there's a level of also, though, having it crafted and given to you gives you, one of the things I'll see is a more comparable experience to other people, if that makes sense. Because one of the things I struggle with is whether I can share the same level of joy and depth that I had with certain games versus others. Not for a quality thing, because I truly believe there's value in both of these types of games. I've played a lot of both and enjoy them. But when I share the moment I experienced in the scene of Call of Duty where you go into the airport and you're playing the undercover guy that now is told to murder innocents and go through that scene, that made waves across the gaming industry at the time of like, I can't believe they did that, let alone put you in the role of, and you didn't have to, because the first time I didn't kill a single one. And I waited for the AI to tell me, like, what are you doing? And then you're forced to start shooting again towards the end because you're still associated with them. So I was actually able to go through it without killing any innocents, but then having to kill, cops or enforcement people that were coming after me. And that's where, I've now crossed that line. And when I talk about that scene, everyone's like, yeah, holy cow, we had that shared experience of that very specific moment. Where when I talk about how I went into and finished a certain quest line or attack or something in some of these bigger games, even to like a single player Final Fantasy game, and the team I used versus the spells and abilities I used, because like I never got triple cast Knights of the Round my entire time ever playing. So my experience going through certain bosses is very different than yours, Todd, in some of those, right?
Yeah.
I can't share some of the same experience. Like we played the same game, but we played it so differently that the way I went about it and the way you went about it were so separate that it's the same but different, right? It's almost like in the argument of the WoWs, the 40-man or what turned into 25-man versus 10-man, where you, or whatever it was.
So, but everybody who played on Horde side on Ice Crown US back during WoW Vanilla had an opportunity to get in on the chain of Upper Blackrock Spire runs. Like, there was this dude who wanted the epic dagger off of Rend Blackhand.
Okay.
And would run Upper Blackrock Spire, the 15-man dungeon, like, just chain run it. Like, he'd invite 15 people in, we'd go in, we'd finish the dungeon. Everybody, or all of, those of us that ported to Orgrimmar would all port back to Orgrimmar, and he would already be, like, looking for more UBRS Sentinel.
People like to jump in, right?
It's like, oh, hell yeah, I'm in again. Let's do this. I mean, Hordak and I used to do, I don't know, 5 or 6 of those a day.
Creepers, man. I remember those as well. Yeah.
It was easy gold. This guy didn't suffer morons. So if you played, like, we would Sherpa people through occasionally, but if somebody would show up and just couldn't hang, like they didn't get invited again.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right? And it's not like this guy kicked people mid, like he wasn't a jerk that way. Like if you got invited, you were in till the end. But yeah, it was, he'd just run them over and over and over and over and over again. I ran that stuff so many times. And that's one shared, like, if you were in our friend set, at least, and you were a Horde on Ice Crown US and you participated in those at any point, you could just say, remember those Upper Blackrock Spire runs?
And you'd have that shared.
So what you're talking about.
But now that's the thing that I agree has that moment that you can have with a select group of people who did that I think you get from those long form, especially from the multiplayer, because you shared that with. It's like the people in Eve who went through and actually were involved with one of those massive battles, the famous ones that occurred where literally tens of thousands, if not $100,000 of actual money asset things were destroyed in a battle. There were a handful of people that were there for that. You know, some 15,000 people actually involved out of the 600-some thousand accounts were at that battle. Everyone else kind of heard about it, but wasn't there. Where the thing in a single player experience is everyone who went through that same gate, that same moment in the game, did it. You might have a little bit of, did you find that secret or did you do it this way? But for the most part, you went through the same crafted experience. Now, Ken.
Well, that brings up two interesting points, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, Wayne.
No, I wanted to hear from you at this point.
One was multiplayer versus single player. That's something we haven't really discussed. We sort of mentioned it briefly, but yeah, you're right. MMOs do have that multiplayer experience, and a shared experience is more powerful than one that's alone. Like people don't like to go to the cinema together. People don't like to go to the cinema alone. Generally speaking, I mean, I've been, and it's not a big deal. But like, it's because people want to talk about afterwards and say, "What did you think about this? What did you think about that?" It's that shared experience afterwards, and be able to talk about it. And I think that's a key element of going to the cinema. Otherwise, you just watch it at home, right? That's the whole point. It's something of a social thing. And I think we get that from MMOs, but we don't get that from single player games. Now, also, we're talking about these things that are like, do you remember those Uber's runs? And yeah, that's a shared experience and everything. But the problem is, do you find yourself asking people, do you remember X? Where X is where you spent, 85% of the game, which is probably grinding, crafting, searching the auction house for materials, asking in chat to try and get a group together. The vast majority of the game is actually a grind, right?
No,
and you don't even think about it. Traveling from place to place, getting points started, whatever, like all that crap, repairing, checking the guild bank inventory, all that crap came with the game, and it's work, right? It's admin on top of it.
Yes.
Whereas when you play something like God of War, you don't have that. The reason that you have a 15 to 20 hour game that you love is because it's a 15 to 20 hours of concentrated gaming experience. Every second is something memorable. Every second is something that is
there's no wasted filler. There's no filler.
Whereas WoW is so... I love it, and don't get me wrong, I still enjoy it. But if you ask me to remember about a specific thing in WoW, I could probably remember that a couple of main instances. But I can guarantee you, I've forgotten 90% of that game because the vast majority of it was freaking dull, man.
And the
I mean, how much of it do you spend listening to podcasts instead? It's why we existed, right? It's
hey!
It's how we've gone popular. Because
thank you, fans.
Grinding, come listen to us talk instead.
We did have a gimmick on the old show at one point called "Where You At? What You Grind."
Yep, right? I remember that. Yep. So, let us know what you're doing right now.
I mean,
and not that it's bad, but I agree, and that's partly maybe why those formats live in the way they do. And you were talking a little bit about development and stuff like that, Ken. It would be hard to create an 80-hour game that is constant, memorable experience and focused gameplay that had no filler, no go kill an X amount of mobs, no go spend your time exploring however you choose, nothing like that, because that'd be tough and exhausting as a creator.
Exhausting.
Yeah. Well, even to play, right? Even to play, that would be exhausting, because there's times in this game that I'm like, man, I wish there was more. But at the same time, I tend to walk away going like, but damn, that was good. And in a way, and this might be a unique thing for me, because I struggled with this, especially in my multiplayer gaming groups in Game Fest and things like that over the year, when WoW became a massive focus for a lot of people versus other games. I liked playing different games and experiencing them in... What?
Are we down again?
I don't show us down.
I don't think so.
There might have been some hiccups there, but I still see us streaming.
Okay,
yeah,
weird.
It bounced for a minute.
Sorry with the hiccups, guys. We're trying our hardest.
Well, I don't know what... I'm not seeing any loss on our end, so that I feel like there's something in the webs between us that is getting sticky. And so...
like I said, I had power outages earlier today, so it might be something across the US.
So we'll blame... No. But that, for me, the... like... I don't know. I liked jumping on a new game, experiencing something completely different, playing through it, finishing it, and being able to box that experience up and setting it aside. and looking for the new all kind of experience to get into, right? And something I could grab that, enjoy it for what it is, hopefully somewhat different, and move on. And so that's just maybe my personality, where a lot of people were very comfortable just spending a lot of time in the same game and slowly progressing through that. And for me, I like sometimes that adrenaline. When I get a new Call of Duty, I don't touch the multiplayer until I finish the campaign, because I know the campaign's only going to take me 10 hours if I play it on a very hard mode versus normal, which will take me 5 or 6. But I go through that, I walk away from it with like the, ooh, yeah, that was something. Rush, done, happy. All right, let's now get into the repetitive multiplayer that I can play over and over and over and over and spend 140 hours in, right? But
dude,
I knocked it out first.
Do you remember our old Minecraft servers that we used to host on VtW and elsewhere, and just amongst friends and stuff?
I remember making various castles.
I remember that my rule was always that any server I was on, I would only play if it was survival, not creative. I don't like any cheating. I wanted to actually do it properly, because I like to earn the building materials that I'm using to build, right? So I'd build these. I remember that one barbarian's fortress that I built. You guys in the chat might remember. I think it was who was the chap who was in charge of that server? Was it Greybog?
I'm not sure. It's been a while. We've gone through, I remember, like 3 or 4 iterations of sponsored servers, or ones that we actually all participated in.
Did like his own like website and stuff, and it was quite big actually, I think, in the end. But anyway, this server, I at the very start of its like initialization, I said like it has to be creative mode, no survival. Sorry, it has to be survival mode, no creative, no cheating or whatever. And I went off and I made this barbarian's fortress like miles away from spawn. And I remember it was so vast. It was 200 by 200, and every layer of the ground was all wooden planks. So were all the turrets in the corners. And I spent like, I don't know, like 40 hours cutting down trees. And then because I'd run out of it, I'd cut down the entire forest, right? There'd be no forest left. And then I have to grow it all again. So I'd spend the next like 2 hours running around planting seedlings so that I could then grow them so I could then get more wood again. And people are always joking like, oh, hey Ken, you got any wood? Ken always has wood, because I was just cutting down this forest again and again. And like that memory is so like the idea of it, that one 40 to 50 hour period of me building
what you just described, Ken,
so crystallized in my mind. It's crystallized into like a single small event, even though I spent tens of hours on it, just like the Uber's runs, right?
But you described another thing,
even though
it's another example of what was a creative game that gave you any option to do what you will with it and create the narrative you chose. That experience is completely different. Like my version of a Minecraft story has always been, I always dig to the center of the earth or down to bedrock and then build my entire lair underground in a way that you don't see it, with this tiny hobbit hole entrance that may or may not be visible to others. And once you go down, you see a fully self-sustained stairway to death, or to the ground, that has chambers off there that grow and do everything you need. That's so totally like my own little epic mansion of a thing that was always underground. That was just my thing. I always did that. And then sometimes I would build something near it above that might connect, but that was like the facade, right? That I just love that idea.
Did you also try to sell mail-ordered freeze-dried food to people?
Not that I recall.
So like the Minecraft bunker person.
Yeah, no, I was though. Because when I would let someone in, they'd be like, holy cow, you did all this. Like, yep, got my bucket of like resustaining water to water all the plants here. Got my underground forest with light sources around to let the trees grow so I could harvest, and have a whole like my arborist in there for what I grew. And that was my story. But that's the thing, right? So I think there's a huge advantage to creative games and games that are big and open like that, because you get to do whatever you want. But in those, it's much more onus on me and those I'm playing with to create that experience. Where when I play shorter form ones, it's only a snippet, and maybe in the long term, it's not as as epic across the board, but it's like a contained, I got my hit. I got what I needed for that moment. And it's weird because I feel like I'm advocating, if you will, for short form games. But that's because I think for me, maybe it's my Steam list. Maybe it's the fact that I collect so many and have so many. I like to play something, play it hard when I choose to, finish it, and then move on to something else. And for other games that it feels like a lot of times long format games, not all, but they seem to require so much focus over such a long time that I have to let go of so many other things to be able to get a good experience out of it. Now, that might be a weirdness that's on me. And maybe I just became more ADD over the time because I have resources to collect whatever now. But I'm hoping I can challenge myself when the Mass Effect remakes come out. And I, for the first time, actually try to play those games. Since I have not. But I hear stories from my friends who've played Mass Effect as one of those games I think kind of crosses and gets the best, a very good example of a long format game series that provides some really well-crafted moments in there that seem to go beyond that too much freedom such that we create different stories than like what you experienced, what I experienced. Because when I hear friends who've also gone through Mass Effect, they seem to really like together they share things that are just like, wow, they all got that together. And that's something I have not myself experienced, if that makes sense.
Yep. You unfortunately missed out on the Serious Sam co-op game.
I remember playing that with co-op back in the day. God.
That we played at Game Fest.
I tried Serious Sam multiple times, and whatever reason, that game engine makes me nauseous.
Yeah. I hate it. Yeah, I hate it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something about I don't know if it's the field of view because usually that's an issue for me because I have Serious Sam like 1, 2, and 3, and I've not put more than maybe 2 hours into any of them because as I keep playing, all of a sudden I get this like, ooh, this is like playing Castle Wolfenstein first or something, or like old Duke Nukem 3D today for me where. Yeah, it's 3D, but something about the way it's displayed would make me feel sick after a certain period of time. So I was like, I can't.
No, that's
it would totally suck because I know you love Serious Sam. I know you do, Todd, because you used to advocate for let's play this all the time.
Absolutely hilarious game, and even more so if you have 8 people in there playing co-op, and the volume of monsters that would get thrown at you if you had 8 people playing co-op. And just my favorite memory of that is that Psycho would yell bull anytime any of the werebulls would show up on screen. Like, it could be at the draw-in distance, coming around a corner. There are 50 of the little galloping skeleton guys that are coming at us that are in front of the werebulls, and Psycho is yelling bull. It's like, bull, nice. Yes, bull. We have these things in front of us to deal with first. Like, I can't switch over to the cannon yet because I still need the Gatling gun for a little bit yet. But we'll get there. Yeah, it was just it was good. It was a good time. I laughed mightily a lot. In those sessions. We didn't have very many of them, but they were a lot of fun.
Well, it's like we always talked about with the multiplayer aspect of any game, like Magic Bus, things like that, where they're still, even in short format games, can be memorable, if you will, narratives that you as a group create, right? The way you play a game and the stuff you tend to lean towards. When I play with the same group, and this is true of any multiplayer experience, right? We have a shared or a thing that we draw together that we're like, this is something we do together. And it can be those kind of experiences of just somebody playing it the way they do or whatever the case may be. And so I don't know if that's something unique to either format of game, but I think that in those creative, long, open formats, you create your own bigger story, narrative, things like that. And maybe it's required of those. But in doing so, when you create something that's truly yours, it can become this really fantastic, deep storyline to you personally. But I don't know how well that translates to others. Whereas with the short term, you may be able to create some level of your own, but probably more confined, and you're reliant more on the developer to present you the story and the shared experience and the things that you find value to. Things like that. Ken, for you in particular, do you find yourself drawn to either format as something more that you appreciate or spend your time than another? The things that are long or short format? I know I've seen you play a lot of Factorio and things like that, that to me I would argue is a long format game. Because it takes hours and hours to get through, right? Even a single instance of.
Even if I chose 10 games that were short, games and 10 games are long games. I mean, if you looked at my playtime, you would still see me playing the long games more because by the fact that they're long games, right? I mean, like Factorio, in its essence, is so replayable that I do have, I don't know, like 800, 900 hours or something now down on it. And I know Hando's over 1,000, and you know, it's even an inspired research project for me, which is crazy. But if you look at short-term games, again, if you ask me what games I've enjoyed most this year, I would probably say God of War, even though it's probably one of the games I've played the least of, just because of the fact that it's a shorter length of time. But what attributes draw me towards each one or the other? Like if okay, let's go for an example. What's that new Japanese samurai game? Shadows something Shadows of
Ghost of Tsushima.
Ghost of Tsushima, yes. I've been tempted by this game because I think it looks really pretty. Apparently, the storyline is quite fun. The combat's quite interesting. And you know, I always love Oriental-based games, ones that are based somewhere that's not always in America, right? It's kind of fun to have something that's right. Even Red Dead I'm playing right now is nice because it's cowboy at least, and not just, you know, you're running around the streets of LA or something. I'm very tempted by that, but I'd say that's more of a, I don't know, is it more of a short term or a long term actually? I always thought it was kind of open world, long term roam around kind of thing, but I don't actually know for certain.
Ghost? I would consider Ghost to be longer term.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm tempted by that, but let's see if I was to compare that to, I don't know, what's a linear short game that's coming out soon. Do you two know any upcoming?
I'm thinking of, and maybe they're similar because I would see Ghost as perhaps mid or short term, just because I don't know what it takes to play the full story one way through, versus like Death Standing, which is I would consider more a long term because it's kind of like this open play it how you will game. But the new Monkey King game that's coming out that I think looks phenomenal, that looks like it's going to be a short term, but nothing but continuous, unique experiences throughout it with bosses and skills and things coming up.
There's one, Cyberpunk 2077. That's coming out very soon, actually.
I would,
and that's something very exciting.
I don't know where to classify that one. That one feels like a midterm one because it's arguably an FPS, but you can play it so many different ways. It's kind of like the
it's by the guys who made Witcher 3, right?
I feel like it's got to be a long-term game.
Yeah, it must be. I would assume that's long-term as well.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say part of the problem is that I think all the upcoming games, I was trying to find a comparison of what things interest me about each, and then I could do a live example of what draws me to each. But there's actually, like I'm looking, there's another Assassin's Creed coming out, there's another Spider-Man coming out. I suppose Spider-Man's probably a shorter term, but I'm generally not interested in that anyway, so it's not a good example. A new Call of Duty is coming out and all this stuff. But, you know, it's mostly long format games that are coming, and I think that's kind of I think Skyrim kind of set a flag in the stone of like, look how much money we can make from these long-term games. And generally speaking, I think they're more popular for the very reason that, you know, people will shell out a lot of money for it because they know it's going to last them for a long time. So you can make money making those kind of games.
Good point.
But to answer your question, Wayne, what draws me to each? For me, I used to avoid short-term linear games because, you know, I want more bang for my buck is the way I saw it. I wanted to have, you know, a lot of hours out of spending fewer dollars. But the truth is, having concentrated game time is, again, that idea of a cinema or going to the cinema to watch a film or watching a TV show at home, right? Like, and I'm not saying something like Game of Thrones is highly produced and got a crap ton of money behind it. I'm talking something like, I don't know, Seinfeld, right? Where an episode probably costs like $50 and a square packet of gum to make, right? like versus going to the cinema and seeing, I don't know, 300, right? Something that's entirely different experiences, and yeah, you can argue different genres and so on. It's a bit of a weak comparison, to be honest. My point is that you're getting a concentrated experience when you're going to see 300, whereas having something like Seinfeld on the background is something you're not going to actually just sit, cover your, you know, close your hands and do nothing else and watch intensely. You know, if it sounds almost ridiculous to do that with something like Seinfeld, but you know, so. What draws me to I'm sort of dancing around the question because I don't quite know how to answer which one is more preference to me. I guess for me, I appreciate both so much that if there's one that's, I would get both. I would always get both. You know, if there's a good game coming out, there's two AAA titles. One's going to be short and linear. One's going to be long open world, but it really interests me. I'm going to go for both. I don't. I guess for me, I'd probably lean towards long term just for the economic value of it. Um, but if I was told that, you know, the next God of War is coming out and it's going to be the same type of gameplay and game hours, yeah, I'd probably spend more on that than I would in an open world game because it was so memorable and so good. The past one was. Sorry, I've hogged the stage for a while. Todd, you were going to interrupt me with something, and I steamrolled you. What were you going to say?
No. Oh, so you stole my thunder, as every doctor, professor, Jedi Knight, Rear Admiral does. Like I came up with a metric, and the metric was dollars per hour, right?
Gotcha.
And if I can get the dollars per hour number to something that I think is okay, then like why not buy, right? So like I played Dishonored for 9 hours. Did I get my money's worth? Yeah. Is it probably going to get deleted off of my, is it probably going to get deleted from my hard drive? Yeah, probably, because I haven't touched it since, versus, say, Europa Universalis 4, which is now 1,561 hours. You know, I, I was thinking to myself this weekend, I should really do a Timurids into Muggles into conquering the world run again on the new mechanics, because I haven't done that yet. Because I've been kind of like trying to figure out what to do in Europa, and like it's I need to do the Holy Roman Empire run, and I need to do a Russia run again, and like they'll be fun and all, but it's just like I don't know that it's going to generate anything like, wow, that was cool.
Yeah.
Like making Ireland Scottish again.
Actually, that you've made me think of this price per hour thing has made me think. What if there's a game that you really enjoy? Would you continue to spend money on it? So again, World of Warcraft's a good example, and then another one, kind of from left wing, is The Sims. Right, my wife loves The Sims. Like she plays the crap out of that game. Like she can say, like what she'll do is she'll leave it for like 3 weeks, not touch it, and then she'll have like a weekend where she does nothing but The Sims. Like if I walk in front of the TV, all I hear is like a hissing and like a cat paw will come out. You know, like like she loves The Sims, and she'll build these like beautiful, creative as hell mansions. She won't even play the game, as far as I'm concerned. Like for me, it's all about just getting to the top of a career, then the game's over. Like I'm really bad. I'm really bad at The Sims for that reason. I don't get it, right? But she's super creative, and every time a new expansion comes out, she looks at me and is like, oh, because it's full of content for the part that she enjoys. There's new content packs, there's new stuff in the game, right? And she loves that. And my point is that if she spends, say, I don't know, 20 to 30 hours a month, right? Maybe more some months, maybe less others. So in total, hundreds and hundreds of hours over the years. Is it really that bad that she tops up with, let's say, $20 every few months to continue playing and get more stuff? Is that a bad thing when she's getting so much enjoyment out of it? Whereas games exist, for example, Factorio, where there is never going to be an expansion for that game. There's never any top ups. You just pay the flat price of $30 and that's it forever.
Right.
So I guess my question is kind of self-solving almost. Is for you guys, is there a point where you would continue to pay money for a game now, post WoW and so on? Would you ever pay a subscription either for more content or just for access?
A subscription? See, that changes the equation a little bit, because I've done that, and while I got my money's worth every time I've done that, Hellgate London is still in my past, so like I did kind of get burned on that in the final analysis. So I don't know if I would do a subscription again. I will definitely continue to pay money for a game that I love. And I mean, if you go down my games list, there are now 4 Paradox Interactive games in my playlist that I could play at any moment. And it's just, I happen to find out that I really love the grand strategy game. And so I'm never going to be as good at Crusader Kings or Imperator Rome or Hearts of Iron as I am at Europa Universalis, but I still like them.
By the way, I recommend checking out Knights of Pen and Paper 2 if you haven't already on Steam. Don't get it on Android; it's terrible, but because it's full of microtransactions. But if you get it on Steam, it has none of them, and you can just play the game. It's not a grand strategy or anything. It is kind of like a D&D, almost roguelike in some respects. It's fantastic though, really good fun.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
Yeah,
I'll keep my.
Keeping a look at that.
It's Paradox.
Yeah,
so.
totally.
Oh, okay. So Ken, for me, looking at whether or not you should, basically, would you keep investing in a game that you love? Yes. I am fortunate in that a lot of the games I've spent a significant amount of time in, I haven't had to invest much money in, like League of Legends. I still love to play it and do my little game modes how I choose to play ARAMs and TFT and such. I don't put money into the game. I'm still lingering on the last bit of money I earned, honestly, back from the Octel and Hordak days when I recruited 500 people into League. And got my bonuses from that. I'm still spending that money that I have like a little pittance left of that I got rewarded for bringing all those people in. But I still play a lot of that game. Like I don't know if I can calculate the number of hours I've put into it. I wish they had an external site where I could just see it, because I base it on an hour for every win I have, since they mostly track wins. And I figure I have about a 50% win-loss layer. And so I've got some 2,000 plus hours into the game at least. So with that in mind, it's like, I don't put money into it, but man, have I got my money's worth out of a free to play game. Yeah. For whatever little money, even I've gifted others, the couple $100 I maybe have gifted others for skins, I've got my money's worth. Thankfully, most of the games I play don't give me much option for that. And I'm not drawn by all those microtransaction things people do. So when I bought Call of Duty, I bought it for what it was. And I've not put another penny into it. I haven't paid for battle passes. I haven't paid for any of those other rewards. Overwatch, I paid it one time, and I don't pay for additional things for skins and stuff like that. That's just not a thing that works on me. So I'm fortunate that way. I don't negate or feel bad for people who do. The money I've gotten to Star Citizen right now, even though it's an alpha and I've played it an okay amount, enough so I say I've got my money's worth so far of it, I, don't feel the draw to drop I know people who've put $5,000-$6,000 into Star Citizen, a game in alpha. But I will tell you, they love every moment of it, and they probably have their money's worth. For me, I put, what was it, $60 the first initial buy-in at the Kickstarter, and I got a deal where they were doing another lifetime insurance on a thing for like $20 or something that I got into it. So I'm like $80-ish into the game. Have I got my money's worth yet? Nah, arguably. I've enjoyed when I have. Will I put more money into it? Not without some hella deals coming out. I'll probably put one to upgrade the one lifetime I just got to a bigger ship, which, by the way, I think Star Citizen's going to have like 2 weeks of free play for anyone who wants to jump in with access to like 15 ships to check it out. For anyone who wants to test their system. But, I don't know. I think for any game they're playing, I do not fault people for putting money into it if they're still getting joy out of it. Simple as that. It's what every MMO player does, that if you have a subscription in MMO, as long as you're playing it, enjoying it, do that. Because I've seen the argument or the discussion showing I have saved money on gaming because I spend X many hours a month in this MMO that I spend $10-15 a month on. And if I were buying short format games over the same time period to get the same amount of play, it would have cost me 3 times as much or something like that. So some of it's just depending on what you enjoy. But hey, right now,
of course, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
if you're an FPSer, you can get Call of Duty Warzone, their battle royale, for free. I mean, you give up 250 gigs on your hard drive, but it's free.
Yeah. Kane Features is very much not. I wouldn't call her like a gamer in the sense that a lot of people I know, including myself and you guys, in that she games, but she doesn't like define herself as a gamer, right? She doesn't like her first port of call for entertainment is not gaming; it's just one of many. Whereas for me, it is pretty much my main port of call. I think that's probably the main how I would define gamer versus not entire gamer. I'm trying to be exclusionary. I mean, I wish whatever. Anyway, My point is that if she's only really interested in The Sims, and that's the thing that really calls to her, and she wants to put money into it, why wouldn't she put money into it, right?
Yep.
Because it's giving her entertainment value, so it's worthwhile. For somebody as myself, I have a variety of games that I could put money into. I'm more likely to do one that's more economically valuable because I'm well aware that I can play a myriad of games. You know, there's a lot, literal libraries of games out there, multiple libraries of games of which I can access, many of which I have owned for years and haven't touched. So, you know, should I put money into something is really a question of economics, not a question of whether it's a good idea or not, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. So, in the end, when it comes to our overall question of short-term versus long-term games, whether you should buy it yourself, or any of each genre is up to your personal preference, of course, up to your economic point of view as well. You know, putting $40 into a 15-hour game or $30 into a 2,000-hour game is a fairly obvious choice, I think, when it comes to pure economics. But as for whether one game is better than the other, I think it can be argued there's probably more of a purified content in the short term, in that every second feels handcrafted, whereas in the long term game, you'll often spend a lot of time doing tasks that are, you know, repetitive. I mean, a combat can also be very repetitive in these games. Look at The Witcher, right? I mean, The Witcher, you press X or press square triangle on the PlayStation for faster, strong attack. And yeah, you can also use your arrows and you have some bombs and stuff. Yeah, okay, it adds a bit, I guess. But generally speaking, you're spamming the melee attack. And it's the same whether you're level 1 or level 50, and whether you're at hour 1 or hour 300. Whereas if you're playing something like God of War, yes, it's a button basher, but since there's only 15 hours of gameplay, they can mix up every other hour and give you a new weapon. And it feels drastically different throughout. So, I think that kind of summarizes our views on the topic. Anything else you guys want to add before we
I want to make sure we throw it out to all of you guys. I appreciate that we've been having this chat actively going with us and talking about your experiences and where you guys have put your time and money. I would really love to hear some of the focuses and anything specific, especially that we may have not considered about what each format of game provides you as a gamer. You know, what is it? What things have you seen in these games that provide you more value because you spend your time in long term because this is what it gives you? And holy cow, that makes up for anything else that maybe is an association that you get from short term. Or you spend all your time in short term because dang it, you want these experiences. What did we miss? What is it we didn't cover? Or do you think we're absolutely wrong in that they are equitable in their own rights, that no, this is the best system or the best way of playing, and do that? You know, what are your thoughts? And so please email us in or jump into the Reddit. You can email us at VtWShowX@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. In fact, shoot, I do have an email that I should read before we're finished, because it came into us from Ionis. Although the wall of text he gave us, I can't finish in time. Ionis, I'll get to you next week.
Yeah,
I will get to you next week. I just looked at the wall, and I apologize that I didn't get into it this week. We will do it next week, but we appreciate your wall. Thank you. But yeah, so please participate. Let us know, and definitely jump out there and share this conversation with others. If you'd love to get into the Reddit as well, as Ken shared there in the chat, to let us know that nice Todd, that so that we can have this conversation further on what things we might have missed as we got into the discussion. So that's my thing. All right, Todd, any last thoughts of yours?
No, I would simply say, do you. Like, if you try to play something, be it short game, be it long game, and it's just not doing it for you, then that's okay. You know, if roguelikes aren't your jam, it's okay. Point and click adventure games are not my jam, and that's okay. I am going to make myself, I came to this decision, honestly, over the last 2 days. I am going to give Fallout New Vegas another try.
You've talked about it many times, and so I'm curious.
Knowing what I know about the design differences between 3 and 4 in New Vegas, I think I'm going to have a higher probability of having a good time in that game if now that I know the design decisions that were made differently between the two, or between the 3, I should say, the main increment games in New Vegas. So I am going to start that. I'm not entirely sure when, hopefully soon, but I am going to give that another try. Nice. But seriously, like, just, you know, do you? You know, I like Isaac. I like roguelikes. So when Hades came out, I picked that up.
Nice.
it's okay. I don't feel like I got bad value from it, but I like it less than, say, Isaac or Gungeon.
Yeah, it's like going from Braid to Revolver, and it's kind of like it's like, but it's not the same.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So I do you like Europa Universalis is my favorite of the Paradox games. I'll play Hearts of Iron, I'll play Crusader Kings, I'll play Imperator Rome, but like my heart will always be in Europa. So there's nothing wrong with having preference. There's nothing wrong with playing what you like. There's nothing wrong with trying new things and splashing around a little bit. And this is a consumer-based optional hobby, and with that comes a little bit of risk. So just be aware that you don't always get them right, and sometimes you're going to buy something and it's not going to be for you, and that's okay.
All right, Ken, would you like to wrap this all up, get us out of here?
I will. Home.
All right, you've been listening to ShowX live on twitch.tv/VtWShowX. Be sure to subscribe, follow us, hit the little notification thing, because that appears to be next to it. Don't quite know what it does. I guess it tells you when we're live. That's probably
It'll actually ping you every time we're up. For those who forget and come in halfway.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea. I should actually do that myself so that I know when the show's going on, too. You can also follow us on twitter.com/VtWShowX, twitter.com/DocDead, and twitter.com/drkenread for the show, for Mr. Wayne and for myself. You can check out Octale on his Facebook page, and it's facebook.com/ShowXOctale. Check him out there, and be sure to like and follow all the posts there. You can check us out on reddit.com/r/VtWShowX. Be sure to subscribe to our subreddit, and then you can see all the posts as they go up. Every single show is automatically posted to YouTube, and then from there it's automatically posted to Reddit. So you can always take part in the post-show discussion there. It's a good place to do it, because obviously it's Reddit, right? You can also support us on patreon.com/ShowX. You can donate a minimum of $1 per month. That's $12 a year. Talking about bang for your buck, that's $12 a year for 2 times 4 is 8 times 12 is 96 hours minimum content per year. That's pretty good. 96 hours of content for $12.
Talking about value per dollar.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's
buy that for $1 a month.
Right?
That's yeah, right. That's actually 12.5 cents a show. That's or per hour actually. So that's 25 cents a show. That's what you'd be paying. 25 cents a show. That's pretty damn good. Patreon.com/ShowX. Be sure to do that and help us out. But most importantly, share us around. That's the main thing. Social media and all that stuff. Thank you all for tuning in. It's nice to see some old faces today as well. Nice to see you, Sean Caster, Leo, and all the rest. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's always great to see you. Take part in the Discord. We've got a link there in the chat. It's only alive for the next day, that invite. So if you're not already part of our Discord, you can go and do that right now. It's discord.gg/ other stuff you can see.
And we do have a permanent one that comes out in the show notes. So whenever you check the show notes, you'll see the permanent Discord link there.
That's also there. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
With that,
salute.
Bye, everybody. And we don't have the outro today because Winamp. So we're out. Bye.
Bye-bye, radio people. See you next zombie.
Yeah. I found
Goodbye.
Zeus.
I found God.